Thanks for giving me the post-lunch slot, Tommy.
We are so going to increase the activity here. We're going to make this interesting because I find Ilaria is a fascinating individual, and I'm really looking forward to this conversation. So, Ilaria, I think a lot of times they read your bio, but let me just, you're the founding chairwoman of Tech for Good. It's a nonprofit think tank founded by Grab. You're this group advisor on tech and social impact for Grab. And also in the past, you worked as executive director of sales and trading division at Goldman Sachs. You do a lot of speaking. You're involved with Stanford University, World Economic Forum, all of those things. And I think we're going to talk a little bit about your work, but more so, I actually want to go back to your childhood. And the reason why I want to go back to your childhood, and I think all of us always will need to look back at our past. Our past has made us into the person that we are today, good or bad. Our past has shaped us into the person we are today. So, talk to me about your childhood, Valeria.
Yeah, so I'm from Hong Kong originally. I was not born a Christian, and I actually had a pretty sad childhood. My parents had a very bitter divorce. I was a very rebellious teenager, so I went to boarding school at the age of 13, and I was not a good kid. I was always running off, pretty underage drinking, and doing all sorts of naughty things. And I would tell the school I'm performing piano, which, at that time, luckily, I was a concert pianist. So I would say, oh, I'm performing in the town. But actually, I was having an underage fake ID and I was clubbing in London. So by the time I had reached college, I actually thought I was kind of done. You've kind of tried all sorts of things and you're like, it's very tasteless. But that also gave me a hunger for something real. And I have had friends who were Christians. My father actually came to Christ after he and my mother had a bitter divorce and after we were estranged for a few years. And I saw that change in him. So what my first day at Stanford, I was paired with a Christian roommate who was the exact white version of me in both good and bad. Yeah? And it was, of course, we didn't write it down. I wasn't a Christian, but that was the first step that God had taken. And I then joined a Christian fellowship. I started serving. I started meeting people for the first time that I really respect. I was lucky that I was born from a pretty well-to-do family in Hong Kong. I never have to worry about tuition, for example. And most of my classmates at Stanford, they were on financial aid. It was that shot for them, and they were way more impressive than me. I should not have been in the same room as them. And but they, and they showed me what it's like to actually live a healthy, life-giving, God-loving, and just fellowship-oriented, all this junk that I experienced as a teenager. I saw it was time for me to experience something that was led by example from a lot of the classmates I had from college days, which till today, they're still my best friends. And so that was kind of this change for me, that I was able to get to know the Lord in college, ups and downs afterwards, especially on Wall Street, on the trading floor in New York. And afterwards, I also had several kind of ups and downs in my career. But I think that's maybe how I want to sum it up. I was always ready to make very brave and strange choices because I felt like I tasted a lot of the forbidden fruit already when I was a kid. So there's nothing seductive about, what people do when I'm 43 this year. People say you have midlife crisis, you want to buy a car and, go have a young boyfriend. I was like, that's not appealing to me, actually.
Okay, so Ilaria, you could tell she's high energy, right? When I look at you and I watch your social media, you and I have gotten to know each other. You're very confident, but not arrogant. But you're also very highly motivated. But you actually, you're a strong personality. How did you become that way? Have you always been like that, or how did you become that person?
Like I was a very overweight kid, and so I also went to single sex school in both Hong Kong and UK. So if you're a fat girl who is an Asian girl in UK, like it was just not a good situation. And so I always felt I was lesser than everybody. And I think later on in life too, it's a gradual process, but I think knowing God gives me the head knowledge that I am loved and I have an identity that's not rooted on the approval of people, but I think it takes like 20 plus years of, whether it's Goldman Sachs, which, everyone judges you. So you try to do all that and then realize it doesn't work. Just looking good doesn't mean people will respect you. Then I actually had a period of my life when I plunged myself into Christian ministry. I went on the road with nonprofits. I worked and supported some Christian ministries. And then I also realized there's the same faults that you see on the secular world is the same here too.
Yeah.
And the way you carry yourself, there is a sense of confidence. I think that over the years, when I more and more God reminds me that my identity is in Him, I gain more confidence. But then it's like how many times I've screwed up so many times. Every additional time I mess up, I realize it's not about me, and it actually really gradually takes off. I mean, I'm still working on it. Um, it takes the burden off of me trying to appear well in front of people. So I think that simultaneous paradoxical parallel between gaining confidence, knowing the Lord, and losing that sense of like self absorption and the burden of trying to look perfect and perform. That is a good pairing. And it helps me. I'm not afraid to tell you the truth because I don't really care how you think. But if you are my kindred spirit, I am overjoyed, right? And I think that's how I find my tribe. And I hope everyone here clearly have found your tribe here too. Like people that when you let down your guard, show them your ugly, vulnerable self, they embrace you, they encourage you, they walk with you. I mean, there will always be people judging you too, and that's okay. I mean, they're kind of our test of our character.
Early on, which leads to your work journey, you went from Stanford, you went to work at Wall Street. What was that like? And how did you navigate through good and bad? And how did that shape you? And we're talking about meaning. Did that provide meaning in your life?
No, actually, my first career, I chose it because everyone graduating in my vintage, which is 2005, early 2000s, wanted to be an investment banker. Tech was coming, but it's not the thing yet. So I just wanted, frankly, the Asian job that my mom and dad will be proud of, and it paid well. So, and I did get to meet very brilliant people, which I treasured the opportunity. But it was not something that it was definitely a choice that challenged my walk in faith because there were times when you do deals. I mean, Wall Street essentially helped rich people richer. There are very good things about financial instruments being used right, but when you are constantly trying to churn out deals, especially some deals, some companies should not be raising that level. I'm asking you, for example, I'm selling you a bunch of toilet paper. I should sell it for $5, but I said, it's worth 50. And you don't buy it, but I am so good at telling you and selling you the product that you end up paying me $55 for a bunch of toilet paper. That's kind of how I felt what I did. And the more well you do that, the more you're rewarded. So I was a top quartile performer. I was made vice president at 28, but I did a lot of the $55 toilet paper sales. So so that actually led me to have a depression, spiritual depression about all that. And I actually quit my job at the peak of at that time my career, and I moved back to San Francisco. I went to culinary school. I love the art of culinary. I wanted to learn about it, but I then started volunteering with the homeless. I started shadowing some Christian ministries, pastors, going on the road, and that kind of helped me reset some of my thinking. I already forgot your question. What was your question? Sorry.
All right.
Sorry.
Actually, in some sense, vice president at 28 years old, and you're clearly just excelling at your job. Some of these guys, if we got to know them, they're bright people. They're going to sit there and say, Ilaria, I'm doing really, really well. I don't like my job. I don't find meaning in my job. I'm burning a lot of money. What would your advice be to them?
Wait, that was just my journey. I'm not saying that you all need to quit your job.
Or some people were in
Yeah.
that situation. Yeah.
Yeah,
Would
and
your
and
advice-
and to add a little bit of context, I just lived through the financial crisis, and I had seen people I know in first, second degree commit suicide, lose their jobs, couldn't send their kids to college. It was actually that period of time, and so there was a very strong impact from that led me to think, oh, I got to get out of there. But there are many people who didn't leave, and you can still live and pursue an integrity filled life if you work through the difficult. So I'm not saying anyone needs to quit their high flying, high paying, high stress job at all.
But if there were some people who, Ilaria, I don't have like
I would say it's not. It may not be causation. It could be correlation because I do think there are a lot of fantastic people who are rich and successful, but they have the right mindset about their wealth and they live a very liberated life that is not shackled by loving money and power. And I also see some people who are not rich and they're miserable because they want to be rich. They feel like the world has cheated them. So I don't think money, like God said in the Bible, is a love of money. I would say that if you're making a lot of money and you don't like your job, see if you can stay that in that job and find a right community and find a new perspective in approaching your job, right?
Yeah.
Wall Street was one thing, but currently, for example, after I joined tech, after I co-founded a think tank with Grab, I went into the world of public policy, diplomacy, ambassadorship. It sounds good, okay, because our think tank is supposed to, we're trying to harness the power of technology to change society for good in Asia. That's a grand title. But when you go into that nonprofit world, there are a lot of people who do that for ego too. And I can do it just for ego because you can look good when you're doing social impact work. But if it's all for your own vanity, it is not really representing God either. And that's actually a fast track to vanity. If you want people's approval, you say you're, the philanthropist queen, it's a quick way to gain human approval, but actually you're not really creating social impact that's positively transforming people. And most importantly, we're not living out God's heart for people. So I think the job is not the thing. It's the heart you have while you're doing that job.
Yeah.
If that job is an environment that's so hostile that robs you of your ally, friends, fellowship, and it robs you of time to rest, have balance, it robs you from having the ability to have a healthy marriage or time with your kids if you're married, then it's time to evaluate.
Yeah. Or, Ilaria, one big advice that I got, wonderful advice someone said to me, sometimes God has gifted you in such a great way that you're really good at that job, but you're not very passionate about the job. But you're really good at it. But and it also gives you a income. So sometimes you may be doing something you're not passionate, which allows you to have freedom. Something you're more passionate about, you may not earn less. And so a lot of times understanding what that balance.
People need to figure out their finances. That's one thing I think this current generation, and I'm a millennial, but like the generations after me, the beautiful thing is everyone wants to create positive social impact. But if you do that and you're in debt and you're constantly asking your parents for money, if they are not in the position to support you, then there's something that's not balanced, right? So we also have to be responsible and good stewards. And sometimes jobs aren't fun. I always realize when I complain about my career at times where I feel like I'm not realizing my purpose, I would look at someone who's collecting trash and I would be like, wow, actually, do you think that guy who's collecting garbage every day feels like he's fulfilling his life's purpose, is so inspiring and he has this career trajectory by doing that? But no, but he's very faithfully doing his job and what he does is so instrumental to our flourishing. That is actually a fantastic purpose. But if we look at someone emptying trash, you would think, oh, what a terrible job. It's actually not terrible, but it really is your perspective to it too. So I would say everything job has a different perspective. There's a good and bad to it. That's why we are living in a fallen world, but there's glimpses of heaven. And if we know God's wisdom and we seek Him every day, hopefully in whatever we're doing, we can realize the tension between what is draining us, but what is also life giving, and we try to bring the life giving side into our jobs and have the wisdom to walk away if we know that that's a no go, right?
Your work right now spans across multiple sectors: humanitarianism, ministry, secular fields such as tech, finance, geopolitics. What does bringing mean to work look like? Someone,
Yeah. So I think most of my work these days is actually with the secular world. So, for example, I just joined Stanford University's U.S. China Council. Stanford actually has a academic center in the middle of Peking University, which is kind of the Harvard of China. Now, what is crazy is that right now, a lot of the Chinese Communist Party members come from Peking University. So people label that China and U.S. cannot be friends. So the partnership this kind of partnership between a top US college and a top China college cannot stand. So that's how our council got recruited. And this just 2 months ago, I was just co-hosting a small event there for some top decision makers in the US and top decision makers in China. There's no discussion of faith there, obviously. In Beijing, especially, I would not be talking about Christian faith. However, I know that my role in doing this is to patch up a very broken tapestry between humanity. One nation that's pinned up against another, not because it's the will of its people, but it's because a few top leaders on top think that they need to reduce and oversimplify people into one-dimensional caricatures to advance their own selfish agenda. And hence, every Chinese person is supposed to see an American person as an enemy. That's not the case. So I know my calling is to go in there and be a bridge and to allow and facilitate situations where human beings can see each other as human beings. And hopefully one day they can also learn to love the neighbor that they thought was so unlovable through understanding, through real friendship, through discussing issues that allow a. So one of the guests that came was a former US president's son who actually flew all the way from the US to Beijing to join us. Another guy in the room is the most powerful investor that heads up the largest sovereign wealth fund in China. And these two guys are just like talking like, hey, how are your kids doing? Oh, my son just graduated from Dartmouth. That's the Chinese guy, by the way. He sent all his kids to US and they graduated and they can't find jobs. So these two guys, the ex-president's son and this most powerful investor, a Communist Party leader, are just talking as fathers who have their hearts out for their kids in this very difficult landscape. How do you help your sons find meaning and job? And they've connected and bonded, right? And so anyway, there was just 40 people in the room. And when I saw that, I'm like, this is my calling here, is to help these people from China and US. I mean, they happen to be very powerful decision makers, but it could be anybody, to see each other as people and hopefully find friendship and understand that the current geopolitical tension that is destroying nations and households and industries, it is not right. And we need to stand up against it. That's just one thing. So this is my calling in the geopolitical field in this particular position. In another field, I'm an investor in an education tech venture capital fund. It's currently the world's largest in asset under management, and they invest in founders who create education tech startups that can help advance education and equitable education. My calling there is to make sure that we're investing people's money properly because we have to be correct stewards of wealth. And then how do we do that? We make sure we're helping the founders grow their companies, helping them advance their education business in tech that will be able to help as many people as it can. And from that, they can make good money, return good profitability so that we can return good money to our fund's shareholders. That's my separate calling. So I think they're all different, but I try to remember what God teaches us in the Bible, and they're all subjective to my own experience. So all of you guys will have different experience in your profession, but there's always a biblical truth that can guide us to do something redemptive with our work.
And then also now you're a mom, and you've had to realize what God is doing through you as a mom. Talk a little bit about that as well too. Now, has your perspective changed now?
Yeah, I mean, I became a mom at 40, so I have no idea what I'm doing, and I have no physicality to.
40 years, I don't know what I'm doing with my 7-year-old kids.
Yes, yes, yeah. So I think, and I don't have the physical energy to, to engage in this battle with him, and which really helps me surrender. And that's a
So 3-year-old
fantastic.
doesn't care about what you've done.
Oh, he absolutely does not. In fact, he hates it when he sees. Normally I don't put on makeup. I'm just like a suburban housewife, I'm like cooking breakfast in my bathrobe, and in California, you do all that yourself, right? There's no fantastic helpers, like in Asia. So yeah, he's just like, ugh, mom, you have makeup. Yeah. He's like, he just turned 3. He's like, oh, you have makeup. I'm like, yeah, sorry that it disgusts you. But, but that's great. It keeps things real. And I really believe God, if we're lucky enough to be parents, is a way for him to teach us a glimpse of unconditional love, because it makes no sense, right? The way we have to love these kids unconditionally. They are just like mini terrorists running around trying to break everything, but yet they are the cutest, most lovable objects our eyes can set on. And all I want to do is go home to him. As amazing as this week has been here, I just want to go home to him. And can you imagine someone feels that way about us in heaven? That kind of puts everything here in perspective.
Larry, I totally understand. Look, I love hanging out with you guys. I love being here. I have a 7-year-old and 11-year-old girl. As soon as I'm done, I'm going to get through here, go to Kuala Lumpur. On Wednesday morning, I am on the first plane back because I have a 7-year-old and an 11-year-old, and she's already calling me, wanting to know if we're going to play puzzles when I get home. So those are some of the best things. For all those, you're sitting there, wow, Ilaria just seems so sophisticated in her thinking. Your understanding of all the missions, all the meaning behind what you do. Who taught you? How long did it take you for you to realize all of those things? Did it come naturally to you, or did you have to wrestle with all of those things?
First of all, I'm really not sophisticated, but thank you. I'll take the compliment. I think that wrestling is the right word. I love that the more I grow as a Christian, the more I realize how much tension I'm carrying every day between wanting approval and wanting accolade and my desire to be free of all of that. And there is not a day, I think as long as I'm alive on earth, I will be wrestling with that. But hopefully with each additional day, I wrestle a little bit less and I come to know God's truth faster. And I can realize the futility of a lot of things on this earth faster. But I will still be seduced by the things that we all are seduced by in this world. And that's okay because that's how the fallen world is designed to be that way, but yet God has entered our fallen world to show us what it could be. So I think for me, it's just, I hope every day I realize um, how much I am prone and vulnerable to fall. That's it. If I realize a little bit more, then I'm better off that day.
Yeah. For instance, a lot of times you heard from Barry this morning, and you're going to sit in on this session. As some of you may have seen his book. It was 10,000 pages that gets condensed in one book. And he had to wrestle those pages of wrestling him journaling, him coming forward, knowing what to do a lot of times. And you had to wrestle that. They never figured out. For me, I'm wrestling. Like Valeria, one of the questions I wrestle each day is, why do I feel so guilty when I'm not working? Is there something that's driving me? Why can't I relax? Is there something internally that I need to figure out? So I'm still. How do you resist the temptation to find your value only in titles, salaries, or achievements?
So my big brother mentor, he and his wife had a big influence on me. He told me that if this is the epitome of a pinnacle of success, all of us are trying to get here. If we try to get here by our own power, every day we have to fight tooth and nail to try to climb, hold on to it, stay there, right? Keep people feeling, keep people's accolades. You want people to approve of you. You want to make sure people know how well you're doing, how much money you have, all that stuff, right? It's a very exhausting journey. But if God decides to put you here, it should be effortless. We shouldn't have to try to fight every day to stay up there because God put us there and tomorrow maybe we're down here. If that's okay with us, then this whole journey of succeeding and failing and navigating through the world should be a lot less painful. It should be more burden free. It will still have burden, but probably will be more burden free than the others. And I think that's how I feel. I think if I'm losing sleep at night trying to get something done and trying to impress people, something is a bit off. I mean, if you want to give me approval, great, thank you. But tomorrow, if you don't give it, I'm cool. And I think those are kind of it's just personally for me, that's my litmus test of I'm not going to run away from accolades and success. But the most important thing is when glory is given to me, I remember that I give glory to God and I give glory to other people. Like everybody who has helped me get to where I am, they deserve the credit. It's not just me. And if every day I try to actively get rid of the glory, so to speak, and not try to hoard it myself, there is this really liberating feeling. And I think that that is something that whether I'm navigating a season of success or a season of failure and insecurity, that's how I would help myself not get caught up in all of that.
We have 6 minutes left. I'm going to ask you one final question, and then I'm going to ask you some fun questions. I was going to ask you some fun questions about you, all right? But here's the last question. How can marketplace leaders, when you're in this room in Indonesia, use their influence not only for personal advancement, but for society transformation?
Think to what you just asked. I don't think those things are mutually exclusive. I think when you do great things for the world and society, whether through business or nonprofit or Christian ministry, when you do good work, people will recognize you. So there will be some level of personal achievement. The key, though, is back to this glory. Is am I like trying to hoard all this glory for myself? Is all the credit mine, or am I actively trying to give the glory to the Lord and give credit to my neighbors and lift them up, empower them? And so I think people don't need to be apologetic about personal achievements, but they need to know why they're achieving those things and what they do with the achievement. And you know, we in one of the interviews I did with you, I think my favorite line is not about me. Like it has to be not about me. Like if it's all about you, we're set up to fail. But if we realize it's about others, it's about the Lord, then come what may. Like you can be the president of the United States. You can be a nobody, you know, begging for money on the street. Like it's life is fine if we know who we are in the Lord in that time.
Couple fun questions, and then we're going to wrap up as well too. Some things that for people to know you as well too. Ilaria, what is, if you look back, what is one lesson from a failure that you had that still impacted and shaped you?
My whole life, I orient towards things that are sparkly and things that look good. And if I want to get into that really well-known university, or I want that brand name firm, or people, right? People that look beautiful and put together. And you see people behave in those settings, and you're attracted to how confident they are. I think as I get older, I love seeing world leaders, not the moment when they're talking to another world leader or a CEO, but how they treat their driver or the person who's, you know, just poured coffee on them by mistake. How do they treat those seemingly people that are of lesser socioeconomic status? Um, that has really helped me assess and realize like that's the true color of somebody when nobody's watching, when truly no one's watching, not when they're trying to also perform for people, you know. And and again, sorry, what was your question?
What is
I'm so
one
sorry.
lesson from a failure that has shaped your
Okay,
life?
that's right. And I think for a period of life, especially when I first was very gung ho about Christian ministry, I really navigated towards the Christian leaders, celebrity Christian leaders that look great on stage, in their preaching, in the way they are able to summon very influential people to be their donors and supporters. I feel like that is the sign when God's hand is on that ministry or on that leader. But I couldn't be more wrong. And I have um, helped some of these leaders. I have come alongside them, and I think through a lot of things that have blown up. And you know, Christian leaders have been dropping like flies around the world the past half a decade or a decade, and it's heartbreaking. It's stumbling. But at the end of the day, though, net net, God's kingdom still advanced because it showed us that we're all just human beings. And so my failure is that even though I thought I knew the Lord, even though I thought I was doing God's work at helping bring advance God's kingdom, I was not really. I was using my ignorant, you know, idealistic lens to judge what I think is success of Christian ministry in the world. And now I'm just more cautious, but I also see people more as they are. Like Tommy, I've known you for what, like 8 years now. This is probably like the third or fourth time I've been join your Resource Global as a speaker. Is because you're pure of heart. And I really appreciate that about you. And so it took me a number of years to see that in you. And so that taught me too to take my time to get to know another brother before I make decisions about whether you throw your weight behind someone or endorse someone or even idolize someone. My biggest lesson is never idolize any human being, no matter how charismatic, godly, amazing, smart they are, funny, whatever. Like no one is ever as good as God. So we're all just equals, and there's God.
Culinary school. What leadership lessons you learned from culinary school?
Don't start a restaurant. So I went to culinary school because I love food. And I thought, oh, I want to open restaurants one day. But I picked a vocational culinary school where I have to wake up at 4 a.m. every morning. Yeah, it's not the glamorous, bake a chicken, take a picture, post online. You actually have to strip the kitchen, wash everything. You have to dissect and cut animal like the chicken. You have to cut off their heads, pull out their feathers, do all that. And then you have to serve everything the speed at which the restaurant demands you. You will burn yourself, cut yourself. Like the injuries are insane in a kitchen. Then you have to clean everything up. And then your day is over and you make no money and people don't recognize you and see you. And the profit margins are so thin for restaurants. It's truly a labor of love. And if you're in a bakery, you have to wake up at 3 o'clock to go start to get everything ready, right? I learned that I have to respect these people that are serving me meals every day at restaurants. When I give them, crap for not bringing my dish out on time or when it's cold, is because they are handling a lot behind the scenes and for very little pay. That's one part. The other part is I'm learning like what's glamorous on TV, all these food shows, glamorizing kitchens and restaurants and chefs is not true. It's a very labor of love and tough job. And so I have learned about the industry, so I would never open a restaurant. Um, and that's a great lesson. And I ended up after culinary school, I became a food critic for 2 years for the world's 50 best restaurants because I'm like, forget about opening restaurants. I'm just gonna eat around the world for 2 years and judge people on it, and that's a better option. So,
Very, very good. Yeah. All right, we're gonna wrap up here, but I always want to ask you this one question. You worked at Grab, and you played a strategic role at Grab. Do you have a gold card that allows you to take any Grab anytime in the world?
No, and
So
you're not
there's no
supposed
gold
to.
card?
There's no, not, you're not supposed to have any of that. The point is that everyone should enjoy the same luxury of having this convenience of ordering a personalized card to your doorstep and bring you from A to B in a seamlessly electronically facilitated way. That's the mission of this app and this whole technology. So no, there's no gold card.
Very
And
good.
even if I did, I wouldn't tell you.
Let's give a hand to Ilaria.
Thanks, Tommy.